Welcome back to the FanSpeak Network. I'm your host, Meg Schaub. You can follow me on Twitter at Megs08DFS. And this is our Friends of Best Ball series. We're just starting it up. We're very excited about it because you do make friends on Twitter in the best ball space. And I've made friends with Andrew Raub of the Sports Gambling Podcast. You can follow him at Raub23, as you can see on the screen. And you can follow them at the SGP Network on Twitter. They do a lot of awesome things in the best ball space, and Andrew does all the fantasy side. So Andrew, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me, and tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing over at the Sports Gambling Podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm definitely honored. I love joining another Washington fan. So
that's why I did it by word for you.
Yeah, when you reach out to me, but of course, I mean, I'm sure you and I can talk Washington football all day long.
Yeah. Do we need to talk the best ball even? Like, let's just talk Washington football. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I appreciate you having me on. Love talking best ball. And the Sports Gambling Podcast that brought me on a little over a year ago, last July, to kind of overhaul their fantasy football division a little bit, help out, and definitely do their best ball content for them. They were doing random like best ball drafts on Underdog, and I was just always in them. And one day they were just like, hey man, like, we see you're always in here, like, what do you do for a living? So I kind of got to know them a little bit, and I was like, I'd love to work for you guys. And here we are a little over a year later.
It's funny how things like evolve like that, it's great. And I know you were at the Fantasy Football Expo that you said was awesome this weekend. And I know you guys are doing a really cool, like, best ball potathon. Tell me a little bit more about that before we jump into a draft.
Yeah, so draft day, actually the poster behind me, sneak peek, that's the very first one. If you can see it here, I'll pull up. That's myself on the left, and the co-host or the co-founder of the Sports Gambling Podcast, Ryan Kramer. Him and I do what's called Draft Day, 24 hours of live best ball drafts starting this Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern, all the way through Friday at 3 o'clock. Kramer actually started this. This is Draft Day 3. So 2 years ago, he started it. He did it all by himself.
Wow, that's amazing.
Year. Yeah, I wasn't working here, but I joined him in like majority of the drafts. I was in the chats helping him. Fast forward. So my best friend was going to get married last year in April, and 2 days before his wedding, he was in a really serious motorcycle accident and lost his right leg. He was in the hospital for many, many, many months. And come August, Kramer reached out to me and said, hey man, like, we'd love to do something for your friend. Why don't we incorporate it into Draft Day? You join me all 24 hours. We'll raise as much money as we can. And fast forward, we raised a bunch of money, enough for him to put a down payment on a prosthetic leg.
And amazing.
And he was truly touched, and reached out to Kramer and thanked him and all that. So it kind of really stuck with Kramer. He's like, man, it felt good to do something. Like, why don't we do this every year? And so here we are now this year doing it for the I'm Able Foundation. They work with a lot of wounded warriors, wounded veterans, athletes that want to stay active. What they do is they will give equipment to people that there's a lady, her name's Devin Murphy. She pedal biked, so with her hands, all the entire Boston Marathon, and that bike was given to her by the I'm Able Foundation. So it's what they do. They give equipment so people can remain active, so nobody sits around feeling sorry for themselves. And they always like to say they help people find the possible when people think that it's impossible. So it's a really cool organization, and we are definitely honored that they allowed us to use them as our charity this year. So, we hope that we have a lot of people join in, and hopefully we can get over $10,000. That's the goal this year. So, that's what we're aiming
amazing. For. That's amazing. Well, I'll be watching Thursday and Friday. As you can tell, I'm a little under the weather, so I'll just pop that baby on, do some drafts, listen to you guys, watch, and I'll definitely be sharing and retweeting because that is absolutely amazing.
Awesome.
I know Felix Castro, who we interviewed a week or two ago, former Best Ball Millie Maker winner, did a 24-hour live stream. And my brother and I, who do FanSpeak, were like, this is like hashtag goals right here, what these guys are doing. So so maybe we all just need to, collaborate next year, or we can jump on with you or something, because I just think what you guys are doing is amazing. So very cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It is definitely hard to do. I mean, you get to a point in the middle of the night where you're just staring at the screen. You're like, oh my God, I've been looking at the screen for 18 hours now. Like, how am I going to finish? But you pull through.
Power through.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but it is definitely a lot, and you have to talk for 24 hours. That's probably the hardest thing, is keeping a conversation going. So we will have guests coming on, such as Michael F. Florio from the NFL Network's joining us.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Justin Herzig, who won Best Ball Mania, the very first one, he'll be on as well.
That's awesome.
Hope Bishop and Davis Peng both will join us as well. So we have a slew of high quality guests coming on to help us stay awake.
Yeah, that'll help you stay awake. Getting definitely people who love talking basketball at any hour of the day, right?
Yeah.
So, well, I love to hear it, and yeah, that is like just hashtag goals, and amazing what you're doing and giving back too. So, yeah, definitely check that out Thursday and Friday, and we'll be sure to share that as well. Yeah, but before we jump into the draft, what do you think? How is your Washington? I have a hard time saying Commanders because the name's so rough. But what do you think about our Washington football team so far? Are you as excited as I am? Some may call it delusional. Is your exposure to Washington high? Like I was thinking about it when I was getting ready to do a show with you. I was like, basically everybody I interact with on Twitter is either in the best ball space, DFS, or Washington fans. And you kind of overlap two of them. And Washington fans are just always near and dear to my heart because we are a resilient bunch, So, but I think we finally have hope, with the new ownership. And, we'll see. Sam Howell's a wild card. Eric Bieniemy, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, totally agree. I actually am super excited for the defense with Emmanuel Forbes coming in. He's looked really good. He looked good today with in the Ravens joint practice, was locking down Odell Beckham Jr. So that's exciting to see. Really, it's the front though, right? The Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. We could have the best defensive line in the NFL. And when Ron Rivera was in Carolina, Josh Norman got all those interceptions, not because he was great, but it's because the front line was getting a ton of pressure. I really feel like that's what's going to happen this year is we're going to get a lot of pressure on these teams, and they're going to make mistakes, and it's going to keep us in games. I do expect the offense to sputter a little bit until it gets its bearings under Eric Bieniemy, but what a hiring. Eric Bieniemy.
Oh, I know.
Look what he's done in Kansas City. Now, granted, that's under Andy Reid, but I love that he was under Andy Reid. Andy Reid's a great offensive mind. We haven't really had anything like that in Washington in quite some time. So I'm excited. Sam Howell's a great prospect coming out of college. He fell so late in the draft that they got a tremendous steal. I actually did a hot take on Sam Howell to end up as a quarterback one this year with Lisa Ann at the Fantasy Football Expo. She thought that I was crazy. She's like, no. and you're going to be surprised. Sam Howell has Terry McLaurin, he has Jahan Dotson, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson. The resurgence of potential Logan Thomas. I really feel like we have a good chance to compete for the division. And if we don't win the division, I think we can sneak in as a wild card.
Especially in the NFC, right? So I have to hear again before we will jump into a BBM4 draft together over on Underdog Fantasy. What is your exposure to Washington players? What's your exposure looking like for Sam Howell, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson? I'm really high on Brian Robinson, especially on Underdog format where you're touchdown hunting. What's your exposure like?
So before the Best Ball Mania came out, obviously I've been doing them. I've been doing best ball drafts this offseason ever since the big board. That was the first one to come out. Sam Howell is my most exposed player at 26% on there. If I go to Best Ball Mania, I can tell you the top two Washington guys are Jahan Dotson at 20% and Sam Howell at 14%. And then after that, it's a lot of Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson. I actually like Brian Robinson a little bit more than Antonio Gibson.
Me too. Just due to same.
Yeah. He's going to be the guy that's going to get all the goal line work.
Exactly, especially on Underdog. I don't understand why, every now and then I'll take Gibson on Underdog, but on Underdog, I just feel like when you're touchdown hunting, maybe more in DraftKings would I take like an Antonio Gibson in the PPR.
Yeah, format. Where it's full PPR. Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah. So I have I just checked. I have 29% Brian Robinson. So I love B-Rob this year. And hopefully he stays healthy. And I just think that's a great 1-2 punch too. And I think we just have underrated receivers too. So
definitely.
So
I'm a big Penn State fan as well. So when Jahan Dotson was drafted, that was a double whammy for me.
Yeah, that's a major win-win. Okay, well, I'm going to pull up Underdog now as I have my exposures up. And why don't I go ahead and I know it can go quick sometimes. So you want to just pull it up too, and I'll count it.
I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, I'll count it down. So 3, 2, 1, enter. And hopefully we're
Looks
in
like
this.
We got 2 more to start.
2 more. Perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Good deal.
Okay. We are in. So any obviously this year we are seeing, a wide receiver avalanche. How are you handling that, especially on Underdog, where it's more touchdown hunting, the half-point PPR? How are you handling the wide receiver shift on Underdog specifically?
Yeah, so typically I like to at least make sure I got 3 before round 5 or round 6 is over. I want to fill those starting spots. Oh man, I got lucky enough to get the 101. Have not had that very often.
So. So you're TD King on. Okay,
yep.
Okay, and yeah, I'm M Shoup, and I am at the looks like 9 spot, which is fine. I've actually been liking a little bit of like the 9 through 12 because I'm trying to really bump up my exposure. I mean, I think more people will watch this after, so I can say it. I'm really trying to bump up exposure to guys like Nick Chubb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, stuff like that. And I think being later, you can sometimes even maybe get 2 of them if you're lucky. So I'm just, now's the time of year where you really start looking at your exposures and just want to try to bump it to where on the guys you're highest on. So
yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So going back to your strategy with the wide receiver, you try to get, how many by round 7 or 8? So
I like to get 3 by round 6. I want to fill all those spots before I really start to, look elsewhere. I would rather just wait and take running backs later. I have done some robust RB strategies where I went like 3 running backs before round 6. But typically, I'm going to take Justin Jefferson here. Typically, I like to... Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I actually didn't even know I was on the clock until it started beeping in my hand. Yeah, so typically I like to, make sure I have the wide receivers I want before I start to look elsewhere. With that said, like I like Mark Andrews a lot this year, so that's somebody I'll lean towards. Really, I kind of let the draft kind of come to me a little bit and then figure out, what values I can get and how I want to play that. But there's definitely, I have my guys this year, and Jahan Dotson's one of them. No surprise, but I mean, so I don't know if you know, but on DraftKings, you can get even money on him to score plus 4.5 touchdowns. He had 7 last year as a rookie and missed 5 games. Yeah. I mean, it seems like free money. I mean, obviously I loaded up on that already, so I'm pretty sure DraftKings is going to start limiting me on that. But yeah, I was shocked. I was writing a players and props article for the Sports Gambling Podcast, and that was one of the ones I looked up, and I was shocked. I mean, I can't see him not scoring 5 touchdowns this year.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, what he did in his rookie season, and he in-house, I mean, it was a beautiful catch in the preseason. I didn't get to watch the whole game or anything, but I obviously saw the highlights, and I just think he's going to have like that second year breakout potential, and to have him and Terry, I agree. That's a great bet. I like it.
Yeah, yeah, and even money too. That's enticing.
Yeah, there's some interesting. Austin Eckler went 3, and Bijan Robinson went 5. Again, I don't blame people. You might see me do something a little different here, depending on what shakes out here. But honestly, I really get it at this time of year. You just kind of get your guys if you want to go overweight. Is that kind of how you're handling it?
Yeah, a little bit. There's definitely my guys I'm going to have more than I probably should have on the exposure. I normally like to keep it under 20% on a lot of the guys, but there will be guys, if I go over 20%, it's a my guy. Like James Cook this year. I like James Cook a whole lot.
I need to get more. I have not gotten enough of him, and I'm glad you said that. I need to get more of him.
Yeah, beginning of the year, my co-host Justin Bruni and myself went over like gems in best ball, and it was guys that we thought were going to creep up. James Cook was definitely one of the guys I talked about. You obviously want to get the best ADP you can on these guys to have an advantage over the field if possible. So James Cook was somebody I was getting a long time ago. Same thing with Kamara, long time ago before the suspension was given. So it's. Some of those guys are the guys I'm really overweight on because I knew that their ADPs were going to change, and I didn't want to get a bad ADP value on it.
Right. No, I think that's smart. So, I think that was interesting about the 3 receivers by round 6. I'm kind of the same. I kind of like to try to do I'm very interested in doing whether it's robust or like a double hero and then kind of waiting on the running back, or like a hero running back. I mix all the different strategies again, whether it's hero, zero, double hero, robust. But I think with whatever strategy you do, you can do that 3 receivers by round 6, 4. I like to do 4 by round 7 or 8, 5 by round 10. And I feel like if I stay within that, I really feel like I still feel really good about my team, no matter what strategy I build. So I'm glad you kind of said something similar.
Yeah, I mean, and I know a lot of people will say, that the running backs do end up scoring more points than the wide receivers do, which is true. But the scarcity at the position for wide receiver is more than it is at the running back. So I try to make sure I have those elite guys, those guys I really like, before really tackling the running back position, because I mean, there's elite running backs, of course, but there's a lot more running backs I like later on in the draft than there is wide receivers. Just guys I feel like could get on the field more, score more touchdowns, have more opportunities, high value opportunities in the red zone and the green zone. It's just some of those wide receivers at the late rounds just don't have that for me. So I'd rather just fill my team with those guys that I think are, more valuable at their scarcity level as opposed to the running back.
Right. And yeah, I think as long as you keep that pacing, then you can make sure you're not getting stuck in what I think now is like almost like a wide receiver dead zone.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree. So what are you looking at doing here? Obviously you have Nick Chubb already.
I might, I haven't done much with the week 17 here. And this is also just needing more Garrett Wilson too. Like, again, at this point of drafts, like, I mean, I can make a case for a lot of the guys on the board. But with, I was thinking about Pollard and doing a double hero running back, since I kind of went ahead and got Nick Chubb early. I was thinking about then doing a double hero. I did it the other day with Chubb and Barkley, and I just liked the way then it kind of played out, because then I just hammered receivers. So I was thinking about doing that with Pollard, but I was like, you know what, Garrett Wilson at this time of year, I've been like trying to look at exposures more often, and he's another one. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I love this year. Garrett Wilson, I love this year, and they're just guys I think I just need to get my exposures up to. And with Nick Chubb, I've got the week 17 correlation. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So what's your stance on the week 17 correlation? Obviously, it's a really hot topic.
It is.
And at the Fantasy Expo, I sat in on a best ball panel, and do you know who Eagles is? It's Eagles.
Oh yeah, I love Jim Brimacombe.
Yeah, he was there.
And
he was like, I don't really put any stock into that. It was interesting to hear him talk about how he just doesn't really care about week 17.
Right.
Because obviously every podcast you listen to nowadays about best ball is everyone's like, it's week 17. I mean, that's what you want. So where do you lie on that? Do you put any stock into week 17? Do you put stock into the entire week 15, 16, 17? Or how are you playing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And by the way, I love Eagles or James Brimacombe. His best ball content on Twitter is awesome. So I love listening or reading a lot of. I find his tweets very refreshing, because and I have a couple stands that I'll run by you, and I'm sure you have stands too, where it's like, it doesn't really necessarily go with like what everybody thinks, but that's okay. This is still a new format. I mean, we were talking we have like 3 years of data in Underdog space. And I'm just kind of looking at like, we're still figuring it out kind of. And so to me, I'm going to do with what I think is best each year. So yeah, to answer your question about week 17 specifically, I'm somewhere in the middle. I know you're on the clock now, but I'm somewhere in the middle where I don't overforce it by any means, but I definitely consider it at different positions. But like towards the end of the draft, if it didn't happen, it's not like think it was a bad draft or anything like that. So I definitely don't force it. I just want to build the best like lineup construction. I want to have the best advance rate to the playoffs. And I'm putting the most stock, honestly, in the week 15, 16, 17 schedule itself. Like, which teams have a great playoff schedule. I'm very high on the Detroit Lions this year. That's why I want to get more Amon-Ra St. Brown. Their playoff schedule is ridiculous. All dome games, all potential shootouts, and so it's more like there's like teams I'm really high on in the best ball playoffs weeks 15 through 17. And I'm trying to get as much access to those teams. And oh, by the way, some of them do play each other like Dallas and Detroit, like Denver and the Chargers. I'm very high on the Chargers. So, it's more that is where I kind of land with it. I mean, this is one of my, honestly, week 17, I like Nick Chubb in the running game because, I know you can't predict weather, 5 months in advance, but Cleveland in New Year's Eve doesn't sound super enticing for a passing game. So that's why I do like, Nick Chubb all season long. And then, oh, by the way, they might have to lean on him in week 17. What's your take on it? Because again, I see both sides, but I probably lean, I'm very much in the middle and but I definitely don't force it. It's more like the whole collective playoff schedule. What's your stance?
Yeah, so I'm about 50-50 on it. So out of all the ones I'm going to do, I take 50% of what I'm trying to do here, and I do focus on the week 17 correlation and or the entire best ball playoffs. Right. The other 50%, I'm just trying to put together a dominant team. Doesn't really matter. I do want to stack on those teams, but some of those I'm just trying to go for the money in the regular season as well. Yeah. That's a whole new thing for us this year is how much money they put. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And I just figure, why not, right? I'm just trying to get a return on my investment. And if I can at least win enough money in the regular season to cover what I spent, I'll be happy with that, honestly. So, right. So I do think that there is something to the week 17 thing, though. It's hard to go against it because, people are looking at it like it's a DFS week and there's 460 something people who are going to be in the final. If you look at it that way, it does make sense to kind of go after the week 17 correlation. So I definitely see both sides. I don't ever tell anyone that they're wrong on this, when we talk to people, because really we have no true evidence that that's exactly what, look what happened last year. Pat Crane won, but the Bills and the Bengals game got shut down. Obviously for a good reason, but we truly don't know if that's the way to do it. Again, it's a long season. A lot of injuries happen. Everyone loves the Chiefs and the Bengals game. What happens if Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow gets hurt this year? That game could be completely different. So right. I think it's good to do it, but I also think it's good to also not do it. Kind of split your difference a little bit.
I was gonna say, so do you do like half drafts? Like, okay, this draft, with the way it started, like you said, let it come to me, and I'm focusing on week 17, and then half, no, I'm just trying to build a super roster here that I think could really do well in the regular season. Is it kind of like half and half going in, or as it falls?
Yeah, it's kind of as it falls. It really depends on like the values I can get at players or who's sitting there. If there's like a couple of guys I like, sometimes I'll do tiebreaker by week 17 correlation, or if I know that they play in the playoffs. Right. So I use that as tiebreakers more than like I definitely want to do that. Again, I more or less let it come to me because I know I'm, this is like my, 81st or 82nd best ball draft in Best Ball Mania. So right. I know that I have a decent amount of week 17 correlation. Right. And I also know I have a decent amount of just going for, the nuts of regular season. So I really just let it come to me at this point. And obviously on draft day, I'm going to be doing 24 more. So I got plenty of time to kind of figure out what I want to do then.
I love it. Yeah. I didn't think about that you'll be doing 24 drafts on Thursday and Friday. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is a lot. And so I actually keep a schedule grid right here with me. It tells me everything I need to know about week 17.
That's 16, awesome.
15. It shows you if where the home games are, when it is. So I keep this with me when I'm drafting. That way I can look at it and say like, okay, I have Justin Jefferson. No, he's on the Vikings. They play, Cincinnati, Detroit, Green Bay in the playoffs. I can kind of go along, and that way I'm not trying to, because I can remember pretty much all the week 17 ones, but the entire best ball playoff schedule is kind of hard to remember. So yeah. I like to keep something with me. So this is always a hot tip I tell people is like print something out, keep it with you. That way you don't have to like think about it. You can just look at it and go.
Right. Absolutely. So, well, yeah, that's awesome that you have that. I have, a couple of little cheat sheets that I use online, that we've put up on FanSpeak and stuff like that. But that's good to have like a color coded thing right next to you as you're drafting. Very, very, very sharp. So as we're talking about like the, running backs later, who are those running backs in the mid rounds that you're really targeting this year?
So it was, a little bit of Dameon Pierce. I like Dameon Pierce a lot. I was on him big last year. Right out of the gate, I did a lot of college review last year, and I knew that man did not put the ball on the ground, and that's something coaches love is when they can put a rookie in and he's not going to drop the ball. That has since changed just due to the fact of their offensive line has taken a beating over the last 2 weeks. They lost 2 players. They're trying to revamp it. So I did have a lot of Dameon Pierce. I'm going to back off that a little bit because I think he's going to drop. Another guy I was on hot and heavy that I kind of fell off because I wasn't sure what was going to happen to him. But now I want to get back on him is J.K. Dobbins. I mean, he just returned to practice.
Yep. Exactly.
I don't know about anybody else, but I saw him hopping on that knee today on one foot.
That looked good to me. It looked good to me. It looked explosive when he started going through the cones and everything.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that was more or less a contract thing, not so much, him being fully hurt. So I'm going to get back on J.K. Dobbins a little bit. And the other guy, like I said, I talked about James Cook a little bit. Love James Cook. He's steaming up the boards right now. Still like him at his current ADP. Let's see, current ADP of 84. I was getting him in the hundreds earlier, so I feel really good about that. But man, just the offense itself is electric, and I really do think that Josh Allen running the ball opens up a lot of lanes. I mean, you remember what happened when RG3 was with Alfred Morris. Alfred Morris was just an okay running back, but he performed because everyone knew that RG3 could take off and run. Exactly. It's kind of what Josh Allen's going to do, I think, for James Cook. So that's somebody I'm very high on.
That's one I need to get. On Underdog, I have gotten more Damian Harris, believing that hopefully he'll win the goal line back role, and that I just want to check. You're on the clock, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I want to play this.
I just wanted to make sure. Now I know to look for TD King 23 in the streets here.
I'm going to do something that I have not done yet. I don't think it's optimal because they have the same exact bye week. But I'm going to take TJ Hawkinson, and I already have Mark Andrews.
Okay, so like a little hero double elite tight end situation.
Yeah, bully tight end a little bit. Yeah, I do have Justin Jefferson, but I've not done that, and I do think to really perform well, there's 664,000 teams in this. I mean, you got to get a little wonky every now and again. So I don't mind doing that, but I just couldn't pass up Hawkinson. I think Hawkinson, and I'm not going to take another one. I'll just have no tight end week 13. That says what it is, but I do think that going a little bit of a different approach sometimes is okay as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, a lot of this is zigging when others zag, and a lot of this is we're just working with so little data that I do believe we can just make our stands, year to year. One of my biggest stands, and I'll run this by you now that we'll see what happens. And my quarterback I took Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, hoping that Justin Herbert would fall to me. That doesn't always work. It does not work. It did not work. This is 2 times now. I'm trying to get my Justin Herbert. I'm so high on the Chargers this year, and I'm trying to get my Justin Herbert exposure up. And, obviously when you're a little later in the draft, that's a little more difficult. And I was hoping like maybe I could bully people into, again, I'm not one of those that's like, let it fall to me. But, you kind of hope that it does if you do that, just by the way.
And I mean, the guy who took Herbert has Eckler. So I understand his thought process on it, or her thought process, but it just sucks when you do that because you're like, okay, like who's really going to take him, right? And then, you get sniped, and it does suck, when that happens, and that happens a lot. It's funny. I got some friends who are casual fantasy players, and I got them into best ball, and like they get so agitated. They're like, why would that guy take it? I'm like, it's the name of the game. Sometimes you got to play a little defense, right?
Exactly. I never get mad about it because I'm like, hey, we're all trying to build our best team. I get it, but when you do set it up where you get 2 of the, receivers or 2 of the weapons, you're like, okay, maybe this is going to work out. It did not that time, but that's okay. We pivot and we move on. But yeah, that's one guy that I'm trying to get my exposure up to. Which quarterbacks, and then I'll tell you my edge that I'm trying to do this year, and we'll see if it works out. Or one of my big stands related to quarterbacks is. But before that, who's somebody like I'm trying to get my exposure up to Herbert? Who's somebody that you feel like at this point with like less than a month to go, you're trying to get more exposure to in the quarterback, like a QB1?
The person I guess I've been kind of going after all off season long so far, and I haven't really stopped because I took him again last night in a draft, is Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and he falls sometimes. Yeah,
he does. I like his weapons a whole lot. I like Doug Peterson. I mean, look what he did in 1 year with Trevor Lawrence. I really think that the sky's the limit for him. Great offense. The division's pretty weak as well. I think that they can put up some points, and I like that. This is his third year now. We see a lot of these quarterbacks end up doing really well their third year, i.e. Josh Allen. So that's one of the guys. And another guy, and again, we could talk about Sam Howell. I mean, I'm all over Sam Howell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Another guy, though, that I have a lot of exposure to is Derek Carr. And one of the reasons is that, I don't know if you know this, the Saints do not have an outdoor game after week 5.
Wow.
Until week 17, they play in Tampa Bay. Every other one is in a dome.
Oh, wow. I thought the Detroit Lions had a pristine weather dome schedule. You can't beat that for sure. That's amazing.
Yeah. And obviously, everyone always likes those games on turf. So I think it's a little bit of an added edge to take some of the Saints players due to the fact of you can just nullify weather from week 6 all the way through week 16.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I know people say, oh, you can't worry about weather and that kind of stuff. Right. But if you have no, really weather concerns in a dome or in Florida or California, that's a pretty nice edge, I'd say.
It does. You just took a guy I'm extremely high on as well. I was going to talk to you about Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson. I mean, look at the guys that go around him right there. Do you see anybody who has 140 to 150 target, upside? I mean, maybe Evans, but not this year with the quarterbacks that they got there. That's one of the reasons I really like Deontay Johnson. I just think that over all the other guys that go around him, his ceiling for targets is so much higher than anybody else there.
Yeah, I think he's due for touchdown regression. I think, Pittsburgh improved their offensive line. I think hopefully that's going to benefit, Pickett in his second year, and we see some second year growth with Pickett. So, I think there's a lot to like with the Pittsburgh offense, honestly, with a second year for Pickett, the offensive line improvements. And then, I just think that's going to help Deontay, and there's got to be touchdown regression, right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, definitely. And, my co-host and I talked about this and he's on the same train. He loves Deontay Johnson as well. And we both said, look at Miles Sanders 2 years ago. Didn't score a touchdown. Look at him last year. Scored double-digit touchdowns. I don't think Deontay Johnson has double-digit upside, but I could definitely see him scoring 6 or 7. If he has the same target share that he did last year or roughly the same and adds 6 or 7 touchdowns into it, I mean, he's going to outperform his ADP. So yeah, somebody I'm very high on.
Yeah. All right. Well, love it. I like getting the positive reinforcement, So you said, your quarterback 1 that you're trying to get a little more of is Lawrence, a quarterback 2 is Carr. And then I love how Sam Howell is definitely my highest, quarterback 3 or late round quarterback for sure. I just think the upside with the rushing is there. I'll be screaming go out of bounds or get down or something because we've had such bad luck with injury luck. So I'll be screaming, every game, I'm sure, for him to protect himself. But he's got that rushing floor, which I think is going to be key to, and then, the Bieniemy offense and that kind of stuff. So any others that you're quarterbacks that you are kind of really high on or wanting to get more exposure to here in this last 2 weeks?
Yeah. Oh man, I really should not have taken Hawkinson because I love all 3 of these guys. I'm going to take our boy Jahan Dotson.
There it is. Great pick.
Yeah,
love it.
It's funny because right here, I have a hard time taking. I love Dotson and I love his touchdown upside, but it's hard for me to think in my mind that he's going to get as many targets as Pittman. But I do think our offense has a little bit more explosion in it than what
absolutely.
The Colts do. Yes. So that's ultimately why I'll do that. But are you kind of on the same thought process there?
Yeah, I'm not high on the Colts offense. I mean, I know some people, obviously I know Anthony Richardson as a weapon, but as a passer, I'm not bullish on that. And therefore I'm kind of out on a lot of it. Every now and then I'll take stabs at Alec Pierce, with the downfield threat late, but I don't have a ton of interest in the Colts pass catchers, especially where Pittman's going. He's going around guys that I love, Dotson being one of them, obviously. So you had great picks there because you got J.K. Dobbins and Jahan Dotson. Love both those picks.
I was happy that Dobbins had fell there after I just spoke about him. But to go back and answer your question about the quarterback. So another guy, a late guy that I like, I like Kenny Pickett a little bit. Again, I'm a big Deontay Johnson guy. I think that offense is not going to – I mean, he was abysmal last year with his touchdown rate. I mean, it was awful. I do not think it can be that bad again. I don't think Tom will let it be that bad. So, yeah, Pickett's a guy I'm heavy on as well in exposure. He's kind of like Howe. They're sneaky athletic. He's going to run the ball. He might find the end zone a couple times on his legs as well. So there's not a lot of guys down there I feel the same. I tell you a guy that I'm not really high on that I know I'm more on an island with because I don't like him that much is Brock Purdy. How do you feel about Brock Purdy?
I think he's going to be a good distributor. I'm fine with him I'm much higher on Howe and Pickett. And also it's very hard to get Brock Purdy. You have to get his weapons, very kind of early, obviously earlier. And whereas, obviously you can get Washington, Pittsburgh guys a little later. So, and same with Saints and that kind of stuff. So those kind of situations just make it easy to correlate and stack up if you'd like. So, but I do think Kyle Shanahan loves him because he knows he's a good distributor. And, if he's a good distributor and gets it in these insanely talented guys' hands, and then, they do with it, I still think he could put up decent games as a quarterback 3. So I am in on him, but I'm higher on probably Howe and Pickett. I have more Howe and Pickett, but then Purdy is someone I don't mind as a quarterback 3.
Yep. No, I agree.
So I got Brandon Cooks. Dotson and Brandon Cooks in that range are like my favorite receivers. I'm going to be writing an article. Hopefully I'll feel a little better later this week about like my guys and just like not round by round or not sleepers, like just like my 10 guys that I'm like kind of just putting a lot of chips on. And then that mid round 70s, 80s receiver range is both Dotson and Brandon Cooks. I have a lot of, kind of those combos of Dotson and Brandon Cooks. And I hope that pays off for me because I really am very bullish on both of them. What do you think about Brandon Cooks in the Dallas offense?
So yeah, I like it. Obviously, week 17 is a very good matchup, for them in a dome against the Lions. Could be high scoring. So I do like Cooks. Obviously, I'm not a big Dak fan, but I do think that Cooks is going later than he should be. So I think it's a good value to take him. Right. And in an offense where CeeDee Lamb's going to dominate targets, but also draw a lot of coverage, Cooks could have some good spike weeks. So I like him as well. I'm a little lighter on exposure on him because I'm really heavy on Zay Flowers, who I believe he went right next to you. Right. I like Zay Flowers just a little bit more because I think that ultimately at the end of the year, Zay Flowers can be the number one wide receiver in Baltimore. Unless CeeDee Lamb gets hurt, Cooks can't really ever get there, I don't think. But I'm with you. Like he's a really good value at where he's currently going.
Right. Yeah. Dallas is just, I think some people are scared about Mike McCarthy. Yes, Kellen Moore, that's one of the reasons I love the Chargers. But I think, if you look at what the weapons Mike McCarthy has, he's not going to go to some boomer run heavy, total run heavy offense. I think they're still going to utilize these weapons. And Dallas has been just a top offense in almost every statistical category, points, yards, touchdowns scored, red zone conversions, all the good stuff that we're looking for as fantasy analyst. And I really think it's still that's going to stick this year. And for Cooks to be the number 2 in that offense, I really like it. So I hope it pans out for me. And yeah, I do love like Dallas's playoff schedule too. We talked about playoff schedule earlier. I like their playoff schedule. Definitely a lot of potential shootouts and that kind of stuff.
Yep, definitely.
So one thing I was going to mention as your picks coming up is what I was starting to say earlier is I mentioned like Howe and Pickett as like my quarterback 3. My big stand, and maybe it's because my BBM3, like I just had like a handful of lineups in BBM3 last year. I played more like the puppy and that kind of stuff. And I was able to get a finals team and it had 3 quarterbacks and one was Carson Wentz. But the 3 quarterbacks were Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, and Carson Wentz. Well, Dak goes out for 6 weeks. And a lot of people will say, well, if your guy gets, if your quarterback gets injured, your team's dead. And it's like, well, not if he's injured for a short term, but you then need the other two, the quarterback or quarterbacks to carry the load. And Kirk didn't have a good couple of games early in the season when, as you know, as a Washington fan, Carson Wentz did have a couple spike weeks. So he had 2 massive spike weeks for me at the beginning of the season, then gets benched or hurt, benched, whatever. Then he comes back for the finals, thought he was going to save me, and he did not. It was ugly. But the point of the story is, I think you always lean into like, what has helped you in the past. Well, I'm glad you got your Brian Robinson and a Kirk Cousins stack with your Vikings guys. Love it, by the way.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, it's a little before ADP, but I knew he wasn't going to make it back.
He wasn't going to make it back.
Kind of had to.
That's what sucks about the end.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. You kind of just got to do it. And, again, if you're doing so many ADP, just kind of chuck it to the wind, because I've already got him at ADP elsewhere. So It is what it is. But yeah, that's the worst about picking at the ends, is that you're just losing a little bit of value on players that you kind of have to take.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, so I have a soft spot in my heart. I think we all do in DFS and best ball for like what's worked for us in the past. And, I wouldn't have even made the playoffs, because I finished in the number 2 seed, and I wouldn't have, and it was close. I wouldn't have even made the playoffs if good old Carson Wentz hadn't come through with a couple spike weeks there. And, so let alone then the team ran to the finals, and it didn't do well in the finals. I had Justin Jefferson at 1 catch. So that was brutal, but it was an amazing finals experience, which got me fully hooked, and why we're doing, we are fully, absolutely in the best ball space and absolutely love it. But yeah, it was a wild run out. And I just believe that 3 quarterbacks is a bit underutilized. And I think, again, same with the whole, like, however you want to build, just make sure you get the receivers before they get kind of all taken. And it gets to be the receiver dead zone. I think the same thing, as long as you're building it correctly with 3 quarterbacks, I think it's fine. So that's kind of one thing. I'm not doing it every single time, some Mahomes or some hero ones, or if I did do like 2 earlier quarterbacks, I don't do it every time, but I'm leaning into a high percentage of my lineups with 3 quarterbacks. Obviously on DraftKings, it's a lot easier with 20 picks, but even on Underdog, I'm doing it, and we'll see if that's going to be the right thing when it's all said and done. How often do you do 2 versus 3 quarterbacks?
I would probably say 80% of the time I'm doing 2, just because I usually like to take one of the
elite.
Yeah. One of the elites, or one of the guys I at least view as elite. So I prefer to do 2. But yeah, I mean, I see the value in 3, and like, I don't mind doing 3 even with an elite one, but then I know that I can't go like 3 tight ends, or I might have to, stop at 5 running backs, or 6 or 7 wide receivers. Like,
that's a good question. So what's your favorite build, like number wise?
So I'm just a consistent person. I like to be consistent across the board for everything. So I usually like 2, 6, 8, 2, as consistent as you're going to get.
Yeah.
If not, I would rather go 3 tight ends than 3 quarterbacks, because I'm a great or late kind of guy when it comes to tight ends. And again, excuse this draft, I went bully tight end, but usually if I take 1 tight end at the top, I won't take another one until like way late in the draft and just roll with 2, or I'll wait till the end of the draft and just take 3 random ones.
Right.
So I guess it really all depends, but I do like to stay consistent, either 2, 6, 8, 2 or 2, 5, 8, 3, something like that.
Yeah. Mine is 3, 5, 7, 3. And usually I'm getting running backs that I'm comfortable enough, and then like 1 or 2 flyers or something along those lines. And again, maybe that's because the way I built it last year and it worked for me. Maybe I've got a soft spot for it, but 3, 5, 7, 3. But I get the point of like the 2, 6, 8, 2, or that's what you said, the 2, 6, 8, 2, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And then what would you say your next most one is? 2, 6, 8, 3, 7, 3?
2, 5, 7,
2, 5,
8, 3.
2, 5, 8,
2, 5, 8, 3.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yep.
So I'm trying to decide right now between kind of firming up that running back or getting a little correlation with Jameson Williams. I think I'm going to do that. Again, don't force it, but I'm very high. So where do you stand on the Detroit Lions? I am outside Washington. I might need to get some powder blue this year, because I am a huge Detroit Lions in the fantasy space, because, I just am so impressed with their offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson just seems to know how to play to Jared Goff and this team's strengths. Obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown is just a stud. He's, I'm copying basically what a lot of other podcasts have said, but he's like a Cooper Kupp version of mini Cooper Kupp, essentially. I just, obviously they added weapons. I've been incredibly bullish on Sam Laporta. I do a lot of late round tight end strategies, and we wrote an article this week. My brother covered kind of where this could be the year of the rookie tight end, because all the rookie tight ends are in just absolutely massive opportunity spots. And then, oh, by the way, it was one of the talented, most talented rookie tight end classes in a while. So, but I just love the Lions' weapons, love the Lions' coaching, the schedule. They have, I believe, 12 dome games, maybe 11 during the fantasy season. And like you said, I think they have one cold, because people will say, oh, Goff in cold weather, that kind of stuff. He only has, I think you'd probably deem it, one cold weather game in Chicago early to mid December before the fantasy playoffs. And then the fantasy playoffs are pristine. I didn't realize how good the Saints playoffs were with that many dome games, but yeah, Lions are not that good, but they're up there as far as kind of like pristine conditions. So I'm very bullish on the Lions. How do you feel about the Lions and your exposure to them?
Yeah, I do like the Lions. Again, I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, that guy's a dog. Any guy that has in his locker all the wide receivers drafted before him and can recite them on cue is cool in my book. I mean, that's awesome. It shows that he really took that to heart and that he wants to show that, he should have been up there a little bit higher. So I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh, boy. Now I'm like, I don't know what to do here. You know what? Let's just get back on the wide receiver train. I like Nico Collins a whole lot here.
I like Nico.
And it's so tough. I'm taking Samaje Perine. I don't think Javonte Williams is gonna last. But yeah, I like the Lions a whole lot actually. You alluded to it. Their schedule's nice. They're a team that is probably still going to be in competitive games, if not behind a little bit. Mm-hmm. The guy, and you took him. The guy I'm worried about though is Jameson Williams a little bit, because what Goff does well is keep it close to the chest. He's not going to want to air it downfield because he doesn't throw a very clean deep ball. So I like Sam Laporta a whole lot. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown a whole lot, but they're going to be closer to the line of scrimmage. I do worry that Goff is going to get himself in trouble airing it downfield to Jameson Williams. I hate that Jameson Williams can't understand rules of dude, just don't gamble in the facility, really just don't gamble at all. If you're playing, you're making so much money, I don't really think you need to gamble
on professional sports.
I mean, that's a whole other topic about these guys. But yeah, I liked Jameson Williams a whole lot, and then it kind of went sour a little bit with the suspension, and then the more I thought about it, I'm like, man, Goff has never really been good at that, and I don't see why that's going to change. And now, insert Jahmyr Gibbs, insert David Montgomery. I know Jamal Williams.
Very high on David Montgomery. Love him.
Yeah, I mean,
that running back that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, if he fills the Jamal Williams role, I mean, sky's the limit for him too. We saw how many touchdowns Jamal Williams had. So, yeah, it's just Jameson Williams the odd man out for me, though I do still have a decent exposure on him because I was really high on him up until he got suspended. So I'm with you. I think the Lions are a fun team. Great. I love that they play in a dome and that they have a lot of dome games. That's always good for fantasy. More points.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm a little nervous about the Jameson Williams. Of course, him being suspended 6 games is terrible start to the season, but hoping that just with the playoff schedule and, that kind of stuff, this was more a time where I leaned in the stack, but I am still a little nervous on it and way, way higher on, of course, Amon-Ra when I can get him, Sam Laporta, and just, I have a ton of David Montgomery. Love David Montgomery this year. Speaking of, this is another talking point, but I've done this some. I know some people aren't into it. I don't mind because I am doing 3 quarterbacks, and especially since I waited till Dak. I tapped I kind of double tapped Dak, Goff, who play each other week 17. To me, they have the whole, season to perform to get me to the playoffs, and then they have the whole playoffs to, you have 2 outs in games, and I know they'll be in the same game week 17. I'll have a third stack here somewhere. What's your take on drafting 2 quarterbacks from the same week 17 game? Is that a must know, or are you fine with it if it naturally just kind of happens?
I'm fine with it. I wouldn't do it a ton personally, especially for the same game. I don't know how many of these teams you have with those same 2 guys on it, but I wouldn't go heavy on it. But I think it's a fine strategy because, again, it's a DFS. So you're kind of going all in on that game. If that game's high scoring, that's great. If it's not, well, so be it, right? I mean, it is what it is.
Right.
I don't think it's a problem, especially if you're going 3 tight ends. 3 tight ends, I really don't have an issue with it. Oh, I'm sorry, 3 quarterbacks, not
right.
Yeah, 3 quarterbacks, it's completely fine.
Because you do have another out then if it's all the running game or something like that. Yeah.
Yep, totally agree. And yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. Again, I don't like to tell people that a strategy is incorrect. I might tell them I don't think it's optimal to do something like that, but I mean, I don't want to be the guy that says to you like, nah, it's not the way to do it. And then you win $3 million and you're like, oh, it seemed like it was the way to do it, right?
I think this is what works.
Yeah. And I do have a couple of teams like that. Like I have a Russ Wilson Herbert team.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. There was another, Geno and Pickett as well. Like I've done those. I just try to keep them at bay a little bit because I don't want to get too crazy and just have a bunch of those, because then if they really go to south, I'm not going to make any money, like really. So, but I do think it's okay to do a couple, especially with a third quarterback.
Yep. Yeah. I don't overdo it. It's just when it falls to me, I do it. And I did reach for Sam Laporta to get a really nice Dallas-Detroit stack there. So yeah, we talked at week 17 early, and clearly this is probably one of my favorite week 17 games. That's easily accessible because obviously Cincinnati and Kansas City, you have to pay up for that of the studs. I consider Detroit, Dallas one of my favorite game that's accessible, basically.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. So I did want to ask you, obviously, since you think about the playoffs, how do you like our Commanders' schedule of at the Rams, at the Jets, home against the Niners? Not great for the offense, because those defenses should be pretty good. But it's
I guess the Rams is the one, because is the Rams in DC or
no, the Rams, let's see here. It is in Los Angeles. So it's in a dome.
Okay, it's in a dome, and their defense is depleted. So that one's good, but the other two, what is it? Jets and San Francisco.
At the Jets and then home against San Francisco. So
that's not great.
I think if I remember correctly, we scored a decent amount of points agaest the Niners last year, right? It was 20 something, I think. Now the Niners won, of course, but I do think that we scored enough points for them to still be viable if they're able to put up those same amount of points.
Yeah, because of course Homer Megan had both Terry McLaurin and Dotson on my BBM3 team that was in the semifinals that week, and I'm watching on Christmas Eve, and they both kind of got there, and I can't remember if they both hit my lineup or if just Dotson did, but it was part of what pushed me through to the finals was we put up enough points against San Francisco. So, sometimes, it's like, oh, it's such a good defense. But sometimes, if the offense that you're playing against is playing really efficient, well, you are going to have to put up points and, it's fine. So, it doesn't sound good on paper. I agree. But we did put up points against them last year. Hey, maybe we can do it again.
Yeah, that would be nice. Take Marvin Mims, and this part in the draft is so hard for me because like I'm really overweight on Roschon Johnson. I'm very high on Roschon Johnson, very, very high, and I probably have 30% exposure to him already. So it sucks to keep taking him. I know Elijah Mitchell just got injured, so I don't really want to take the gamble on that yet.
I know.
I think I'm going to take Kenny Gainwell.
I love Gainwell. I've been taking a ton of him.
Yeah, he seems to be getting a lot of the first team reps as well.
I mean, they trusted him during the playoff run. I mean, I think it's going to be a mix of like Swift in that pass down role. Maybe Penny has more of the base role, but I just think they're going to lean on Gainwell a lot. They trusted him during that Super Bowl, that run to the Super Bowl.
And I don't know if you just noticed here. So we just had a guy who drafted right after me take Tank Dell. Tank Dell's ADP right now is 188. Wow. He just went up 146. The preseason hype is real on Tank Dell.
That is real. Yeah.
Yes, I have currently more exposure to him than I probably needed to as well. I think I have 14% exposure to Tank Dell, all within the 200 range before anyone even knew who he was.
Okay.
And again, shout out to the guys that work for us over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network Fantasy Football YouTube page, Dave Heilman and Brad Stadler. They do every year a 10-minute series on each player coming into the draft from college. That is where I learned about a lot of these guys, and so far it has heavily paid off. Guys that they like, Tank Bigsby won. That's a guy I drafted a lot in the rookie and sophomore drafts, and now he is steaming up boards.
He's flying up boards. Yeah.
Yeah. So I find that a lot of people don't usually do a ton of research into the rookies coming out. They see that they watch the draft, they see some of these guys, they know the big ones, the JSNs, the Addisons, right? But some of these other guys, Tank Dell, Bigsby, like these guys coming out that like nobody really knows who they are. There's definitely information out there for you to find, especially stuff that if you don't like to read a lot of stuff, again, we bring out a 10-minute series on each player. So definitely, I always tell people about that. And I told a lot of people about that this year. I mean, it was a pretty cool thing. I mean, when you get in your car, how many times do you get in your car and don't drive 10 minutes, right? Like it's really easy to listen. And that's where I learned about a lot of this stuff. So shout out to those guys.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe over. What's the where would they type in the YouTube to find you guys and subscribe?
Yeah, so they would just type in SGPN Fantasy Football. Actually, if you pull up the last comment that I saw, it must have been my co-host because he runs the thing. Yeah. So if anybody wants to type that in, SGPN Fantasy Football on YouTube, subscribe. Please let us know if you guys saw me here, because we do care about where you guys are finding us.
That's awesome.
It obviously means a lot to us to subscribe. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, and then of course a big Thursday, Friday, 24-hour draft-a-thon that everybody needs to check out. That is
yes. Very much so. Again, electric guest, a lot of raffle items. Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers, contacted him. He was trying to get on, for an hour with us, just couldn't do it with his hectic schedule, which I completely understand. But he is nice enough. He wrote a kid's book called My Family Football Book. I bought it for my son. I pre-ordered it, like 2 years ago when it came out. He's signing a copy and sending it to us so that we can raffle it off.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We have reached out to a lot of different people. Pete Overzet as well, big best ball guy. Yep. I'm sure everyone knows Pete. He was going to come on, same thing. He's live streaming every single one of these Best Ball Mania drafts that he does. He wasn't able to make it now, but he is giving us a $100 gift card to his merch store. We have some bottle of booze. Oh my God, what else? Justin Herzig is giving away, something that he's working on. I don't want to talk too much about it because I told him that he can kind of unveil it on draft day. But, there are a ton of cool stuff. All you guys got to do is just make a small donation to the I'm Able charity, and you'll be entered into the raffle. If you do it up top, you're in the raffle from the time that you donate all through 24 hours. So I always tell people, try to get in the very first hour, make your donation so that you can optimize your chance at winning something. But yeah, awesome. Ton of cool prizes. So very excited. It's going to be a long 24 hours, but I'm jazzed up for it.
Yeah, that's it. And so how many of your crew is there? I know you have a great guest list, but how many of your crew is there?
So at the top, it'll be Ryan Kramer, who's in the poster beside me. He's the one who will do all 24 hours with me. And then Sean Green, who's the other co-founder of SGPN. The very first hour, we all get on, do that, talk about, talk about the charity. We're going to get a couple of people from the charity on. But overall, through the 24 hours, we should have roughly 7 to 10 of our own guys coming on and talking. There will be a couple coming on, Justin and Miranda Mark. They do old-fashioned fantasy football, which is review. Cool. Yeah, they review whiskey and bourbon while also talking fantasy football. So we have a lot of different avenues. We try to have an avenue for every single kind of fantasy football player, whether you're super advanced or a novice or just like to recreationally do it with friends. We cover everything: Dynasty, IDP, best ball, redraft, you name it. It's up there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to try to get a lot of people in there if possible.
I love it. Yeah, I definitely will be watching. That sounds amazing. And I give anybody credit that drafting 24 hours in a row. Again, it's hashtag goals, but I mean, it's no joke either,
It's tough for sure. Yeah, you just get to a point where you become tired for a little bit, and then you kind of get past that, and then you're rolling, and then you get off and you're like, oh my God, what do I do now? Like, I'm not tired anymore, but I've been up for 24 hours. Take Jake.
I love Jaden Reed this year.
Yes.
Think he's got that slot receiver role. I think that's a great pick.
He's running backs. This is the part of the draft where I start taking a lot of running backs. So I have like a lot. Jerome Ford is my most exposed player in general. A ton of Jerome Ford.
And what's your take on Zamir White?
I'm going to take him right now. I'm glad that you're bringing that up. I think it's a good gamble. And again, I just talked about this.
I think I should have gambled more earlier before his price, but I still feel like I should get some shares. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
No. You're good. And you're exactly right. Like, people should have been on this a little bit earlier. I had taken some of him, not a whole lot, but I had taken some when Josh Jacobs started kind of talking about like, it's not fair to running backs. And you could kind of read through the book a little bit, like what was going to happen. So I took a little bit there. Then I pulled back, and kind of thought about it. But I think Zamir White's a good pick, especially here in the 170s. If you can get him anywhere from here to 200, no matter where it is, I think it's a valuable pick because Josh Jacobs don't play or comes back and isn't right because he hasn't been practicing. And Zamir White, we just saw how to, I mean, and Zamir White just had a good showing in the preseason, take that for what it is, but he had a good showing. I think the coaches are fine rolling with him until Josh Jacobs can get his butt back to camp and get in shape. So even if he only gives me 2 or 3 spike weeks or 2 or 3 usable weeks, I'm okay with that with how I draft I don't take a whole lot of those hero running backs. I'm just looking for guys that can get me a couple weeks, that I can use them somewhere, in my roster. So I think that's definitely somebody that could potentially start the year and maybe play 2 or 3 games until Josh Jacobs and the Raiders come to some sort of agreement.
Right. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I don't think he has any leverage, and I think he comes. But like you said, what if he comes back and he's just not right for a while, and that's why it was one of those where I just kind of was frozen and didn't know what to do on it, and I should have taken more early. But I do need to still get some shares.
Yeah. Who are some guys that you really like to go for, like in round 17 or 18? Like, is there guys that are you more or less taking the same guys and just kind of hoping that those guys pan out, or are you, just kind of throwing darts at a lot of guys?
A little bit of a mix. I'd say I'm big on I mentioned the 3 quarterback thing. I also really do like, I mean, believe me, I have Kelsey. I see the points for, Mark Andrews and Hockenson, the guys you got in this draft. I mean, how can you not? But I do love the way my teams look when I take, build out the running back, receiver, 1 or 2 quarterbacks, and then do the late round tight end strategy. And I'm very high on all 3 or 4 rookies in Laporta, Kincaid, Musgrave, and even Mayer out of Vegas. And then I think there's other late round tight ends. We'll see if this one falls to me here, and Jake Ferguson, because I have Dak. A little bit before him, you have guys like Higbee and Gerald Everett and that kind of stuff. So I'm big on that. So if I can get like a late round tight end, like a Michael Mayer or something like that, I've even been taking a couple shots I took some shots at Logan Thomas, kind of regret that because he just can't seem to stay healthy. So I've been taking a few shots lately at, not overboard, at Cole Turner. What do you think on that?
I don't hate it. I mean, I took some Logan Thomas as well, especially when he started to become healthy and we saw him catch passes. And I'm like, all right, like I can buy back in.
Right.
Plus, Logan Thomas played quarterback, so there's the chance that he can pull some Taysom Hill stuff. And
we've got a very creative offensive coordinator now.
So I still think it's an okay option to take Logan Thomas as well. I don't think he's going to be done for the season by any means. I mean, I think he may give you a few weeks, but I'm okay taking Cole Turner. I mean, as a guy who watches all these practices and, is very in depth with what Washington is doing. Eric Bieniemy, obviously we all know what he did with Travis Kelce. We obviously do not have a Travis Kelce-esque tight end on the team, but Cole Turner is, I think, a little underrated for his pass catching. So I like that a lot. I prefer that over Bates.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think Cole Turner is so athletic, I mean, so much more athletic. And like you said, the Bieniemy offense, we don't have anybody that resembles Travis Kelce, but obviously they utilize their tight ends and utilize them creatively. So he's one. I didn't realize I took Jake Ferguson when I have I had taken Irv Smith for week 7 bye, but I have Laporta too. So I have 3. So 2 have the same bye, but then I have Laporta at week 9. So a lot of times it's maybe a late round tight end in the 17 or 18, but receivers I like in 17 or 18. I've got a good bit of them. Let's see. I don't mind Corey Davis from the Jets. I think, Aaron Rodgers is such a good deep ball thrower. I think Corey Davis's contract suggests that he will stay there and could be just a deep target. Sticking with the Lions, I actually like Josh Reynolds, obviously with Jameson Williams, who I drafted out for the first 6 weeks. He's got that Goff connection, but then, he still could just still play a role. So for a last pick, I don't mind Josh Reynolds. They actually sat him with the starters this first preseason game. So I think that obviously points to he is a true starting receiver to start the year. And I'm trying to think some of this. I don't understand why Darius Slayton from the Giants is going so late. I don't think he's quite 17th. He might be more 16th, but let's see if he's gone yet. Yeah, no, he's more like 200. So yeah, he's more like a 17th, 18th guy. So yeah, and then I'll take some random receiver shots. Like I've taken shots on, let's see, Quez Watkins, Mac Hollins, those kind of like stabs, especially, if it correlates, or sometimes just like, mixing up the exposure. But I'd say my highest late round receivers are probably Corey Davis, Darius Slayton, and Josh Reynolds, and then like a mix of some tight ends. How about you? Who are your go-to late round guys?
Terrence Marshall for the Panthers. Yeah. Again, a guy who's, I mean, he's been there now. Unfortunately, he was carted off, the other day, but I did see an update that it was just like kind of more or less precautionary. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm okay with that. Oh, thank God Sam Howell made it back to me. Yikes. I forgot about quarterback there for a second and got worried I was going to have to pivot, but I will take Sam Howell here.
I love it.
I'm going to take Mechie because I have Collins and I saw Tank Dell already went. So I'm going to do that here. But yeah, I mean, so Terrence Marshall's a guy I've been drafting a lot of. I just think that's an offense that there's no established one guy who's going to lead the team. Terrence Marshall has at least been there and flashed some, ability to be a viable option. Adam Thielen's over the hill. Don't love Adam Thielen. DJ Chark's interesting as well there, but I like Terrence Marshall. But my guy, the guy I really like that I've been hyping up all off season long ever since he got to the Rams is Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
Puka Nacua is interesting. I think that he can overtake Van Jefferson on the Rams. I think that, he's going to learn a lot from Cooper Kupp. He kind of has the same abilities as Cooper Kupp. He's a little bit, I think more of a target, possession wide receiver, but he is fast and he has been performing very well in OTAs and training camp. So
he had a great first preseason game. Didn't he have a good
he scored a touchdown. Well? Yep. Scored a touchdown, had some catches. So I love seeing that. I've been drafting probably, again, more than I really need to of him. I always fall into this trap. I've done it last year and I told myself I shouldn't, but I fall into the trap of like, there's guys I really like at the end of drafts. And I'm like, I'm just going to take them. If I'm right on them, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I was talking to, Eagles at the Expo and he does the exact opposite. He's like, I want to be less than like 5% exposure on all these guys. Like, I just want to take some shots.
Oh, okay. On the late round guys. Yeah. Okay.
Correct. That makes sense. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I'm like 20% on like Puka Nacua. I'm like, that's not great, huh? And he's like, it's not what I would do, but I'm like, all right. So yeah, I mean, so that's a guy. And let's see. It used to be Tank Dell until he got steamed up. Now
he's got major steam. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. But I took a lot of Tank Dell, so I probably will back off him a little bit. Are you more or less, when we get to these final rounds, are you more or less taking wide receivers, or do you still try to take some of these running backs or tight ends?
This is the latest I've done, right? Usually I kept kind of getting sniped on some running backs. I usually try to build a base of like 3 running backs I really like, and then fill in with like two to 3 late round guys, depending on what the strategy was for me. And this is usually latest. Usually I get like my 4th is like a Jamal Williams type, somewhere in that range in the 120s to 140s. And then it just didn't kind of work out for me. I got, 3 running backs kind of in the top 100, but then, my last 2 were late. So I don't typically take running backs late. More so on DraftKings for that 6th running back, I'll take just shots, like you said, mix up shots on different guys. But that was something that kind of burned me last year, taking too many shots on just pure handcuffs. And so, I'm trying to, so the running back is probably the position I take the least late. And I'm taking Sam Howell's probably my latest quarterback, which you got him in the round 16. So I'd say mostly my late round 17 and 18 rounds are mostly receiver and tight end. It didn't work out that way. Today it's going to be potentially running back and quarterback. That's very different, and one is not going to correlate. Hindsight, I should have taken Mayer or Hunter Henry for a different tight end bye week, and then I'd have 2 options of actual stacking. Again, hindsight 2020. Sometimes it doesn't go exactly, but that's okay. But again, I just would like to have a 3rd. I don't have a stack like I originally intended, but I'm gonna actually go Jimmy here to finish up. But yeah, I don't typically do running back and quarterback late. It's more of receiver, tight end. So this was definitely different for me. It just didn't fall. And then I wish I would have, as much as I love Jake Ferguson, wish I would have maybe flipped him for another tight end that's stacked. So what is your, are you more receiver, tight end in the last few rounds, and like how in the 15th or 16th?
So really, again, I'm kind of, I look at the draft and kind of let it tell me what I need to do here. So I'll look at my team, and like right here, like looking at my team, I'm 2-5-8-2 right now. I'm going to go running back because I know I want to go 2-6-8-2 here.
Yeah.
So it really depends. But if I had like two tight ends I wasn't like super sold on, I would probably go tight end here and just take it 2-5-8-3. But I really just look at my team, and that will kind of tell me what I need to do for my last pick. I don't really, look at it and like, okay, I definitely want to do this. I will just look at the draft and kind of let it tell me what to do here.
Oh, I think that's the best way to do it for sure. Is kind of let it come to you, and we both kind of fell into our line of construction numbers that we like the best. And you did get the 2-6-8-2. You said.
Yep.
Love it. And I ended up doing the 3-5-7-3. Didn't execute my 3-5-7-3 as well as I typically like to say that I do, but that's okay. So why don't we take a look at our teams after your last pick?
Oh man, let's take Chris Evans.
Yeah, he's been getting kind of the steam as the number 2 in Cincinnati, right? Because I was drafting Chase Brown for a while.
Yeah,
and
Chase Brown.
Off that. Boy, that was yikes! That might not pan out.
Yeah, it's kind of like exactly what Chris. I had a lot of Chris Evans last year, and he didn't really do anything. Samaje Perine did it, so I'm thinking, all right, like maybe now it's Chris Evans' time, and Chase Brown will just have to get the chase, or wait till next year. When Mixon's gone, possibly. It's always hard to know with these guys, especially what they do in preseason. Preseason really means nothing per se, so it's really hard to kind of buy in, but also not buy in at the same time.
Right. Absolutely. Well, let's take a look at your lineup. So again, 2-5-8-2 for you, and you have Cousins and Howe both stacked. I know. Oh, you did what I love doing is you stacked the running back too. I love that that ping ponging of the running back too. And again, maybe because it worked for me in my finals team last year where I had Dak, Zeke, Gallup, and Dalton Schultz, and I just think that ping pong effect of different positions, but the running back quarterback can kind of, I don't know, have a ping pong effect, during the season and especially in the playoffs. So I love that you got Brian Raub. Do you actively try to do that? Or just if it kind of naturally happens, obviously.
Yeah, I say stacking the running back with it, I'm okay doing it. If it naturally happens, I'm fine taking it. I didn't look at Robinson and be like, yeah, I'm definitely taking him, so I know I'm going to take Howe. It just happened to kind of go that way. Now, I did want to take Ty Chandler. Somebody had sniped him. Mm-hmm. I was going to try to purposely do that with Cousins just to make sure I had another Minnesota player. Yeah. But that did not go through. But now that I'm looking at my team, I had the
last running back didn't show up just because I didn't refresh. But yes.
Yeah, Chris Evans is sitting there. But yeah, so as I'm looking at this team now, I had former Washington player and current Washington quarterback. Yeah. So I love notice that now.
I love it. Well, I'm jealous of your team already with the Washington stack because you got Howe, Robinson, and then of course Jahan Dotson, who I'm so bullish on. But yeah, I love your running back room of J.K. Dobbins, Brian Robinson, Samaje Perine, Kenneth Gainwell, Zamir White, and then you said the sixth one is Chris Evans, and then Justin Jefferson, Devonta Smith, DeAndre Hopkins, Jahan Dotson, Nico Collins, Marvin Mims, Jaden Reed, run back to the Vikings, John Mechie, Mark Andrew, and then the bully tight end. So I really love what you did here. Big fan of the way you stack things up and the correlation. And yeah, anytime you have a nice Minnesota stack and a nice Washington stack, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think looking at my team, I'm going to need some weeks where both tight ends are slotted into my roster and I get points from them, which I do think is definitely possible.
Oh, that's very viable. Yeah.
So going bully tight end, I think that that's something I really need to hope for, is that there's a couple weeks where they both will score points for me.
Right. Okay. Let's take a look at my team, and then we can head out. So kind of was going for, you'll be able to see, I did do the 3-5-7-3. Again, my last tight end and last quarterback selection was probably not what the optimal, but we move on. But I got Dak Prescott, Jared Goff in the same Week 17 game, Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Chubb, Alexander Madison, James Conner. So I felt really good about those three. I like Gus Edwards as like a 4th, 5th running back. Love him. Just kind of still think he'll get work. I'm very high on Dobbins, who you have, but and then I picked up Clyde Edwards-Helaire late. Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, tell me about that. I wanted to ask you during the thing because I saw, obviously like Deneric Prince was getting some steam. Obviously they have, McKinnon and they have Pacheco. So talk to me about Clyde Edwards-Helaire because that's somebody I have not drafted yet, but drafted a ton of them last year and it just didn't work out.
Didn't work out. I mean, listen, if it wasn't at 200 or further, I wouldn't have any interest in it, but it's where he's going. And more, I would honestly like this. Again, I'm definitely can see kind of holes in what I should have done some things differently. This probably, even though I started with Chubb and Madison, maybe this needed a little more meat to do a 6 running back here. I don't know, but typically I'd like CH more as like a 6 running back, and I do that more over on DraftKings, or if I do 6 running backs here. So it's just where he's going. Like Pacheco runs hard. If he gets injured, I think CH is going to be the kind of the main backup to Pacheco, and then McKinnon's that pass catching, just massive weapon. I'm not worried about Deneric Prince. Maybe I'll be wrong on that. But yeah, I just think, also Andy Reid kind of mixes up his running backs and goes hot hand sometimes and that kind of stuff. So if you told me, CH got a couple spike week games that at, one of my last picks, that's all I'm kind of looking for. So it's definitely not something I'm pounding the table for CH, but it's, as like a last running back, I don't mind it basically.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't doing it. And then I was seeing where he's going, and I just kind of got the case for, because Pacheco is coming back from injury, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think he's going to be fine. Obviously it sounds like he's going to be fine to start the season, but it just wouldn't shock me. And, Andy Reid does seem to mix in his running back. So it wouldn't shock me if, CH just popped in for a couple mini spike weeks or two. So at that price, I'm okay. But receivers, Garrett Wilson, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. I was obviously going for the Herbert stack that got sniped. That's okay. Got Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks. I love that. That's what made me want to then stack Dak. Went ahead and leaned into the Detroit-Dallas game with Jameson Williams. And then Isaiah Hodgins, I said I like Slayton late. I like Isaiah Hodgins too. And I think even reaching for him where I did, because I just didn't love everything else there. I think he's going to be the red zone threat for the Giants. They have all these slot receivers, and I just think Hodgins and Slayton on the outside could be key. So yeah, I really like Hodgins. And then of course I got my favorite guys, Sam Laporta, Irv Smith, and Jake Ferguson. Wasn't happy that I doubled up there. Again, wish I would have maybe correlated like a Hunter Henry or Michael Mayer with my last quarterback. But overall it leans into a lot of my like player takes and team stacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I like your team, especially if we get if Detroit and Dallas is the highest scoring game and this team makes it to the finals, you are going to have a very good shot at $3 million. I mean, that's when you ask me the question about doing this, like that's kind of what I think of, in my mind is, well, if you do it and that's the highest scoring game, I mean, how is anyone else going to like really end up beating you, unless they have oddball guys that went off in some weeks, which obviously can happen, but that's why week 17 is important a little bit. So I like doing that. It's fine. Again, I like the way that you stacked or that you took another quarterback so that you didn't just have to rely on that game. You do have a backup quarterback for that. Yeah. So, I mean, I like your team a lot, and I do if I'm going to take 3 quarterbacks, I usually end up taking like 3, 5, 7, 3, like you did. Yeah. I think it makes you not be able to take another wide receiver because, if you're taking 3 quarterbacks, you're probably not having 2 elite tight ends or anything like that, so you probably have to take 3 tight ends as well, most likely. Right. But I like your tight ends. I'm higher on Irv Smith than the average bear as well. I think that he can perform pretty well with Cincinnati, and so I like your team, and of course you got my guy Deontay Johnson. Love that.
Yeah, love that. I'm happy with that. I think I love your team more because I'm wearing the Washington shirt. I didn't get any Washington guys. I mean, I think I was so like bullish to try to get force a Herbert stack that I passed up our guy Terry. So, anytime I leave a draft with no Washington players, I'm a little like, I don't know if I feel good about this team,
Oh, but they break our heart all the time. You probably made the right decision not taking them.
I hope not. I hope this is our year. So,
yeah. I wanted to mention though, I love your shirts back there, the Legend of Heineke shirt and the You Like That shirts. Those are awesome. My so the Legend of Heineke, obviously that comes from the Tampa Bay playoff game. And during the COVID season, obviously nobody was there. And I don't know if you know, Tanya Snyder actually had people be able to send in photos that they were doing those stand-up things that they put in the seats.
Yeah.
I sent one in of my son, which was at the time he was like 1.5. So after the game, they would send it to you. So I did have him up here before I put up the 2023 schedule on it. But I actually have a Washington. It has this on the front of it, and it has my son's picture, just his head up on the shoulders of it.
Is he in a jersey or anything?
Yeah. So like it's just a standalone like it's a maroon jersey, and it has all this stuff already on it, and then you just send in a headshot of whoever you wanted on the body.
Okay, gotcha.
So he has he's like 1.5 at the time. So
that's so cute.
It's just funny because eventually I'll have to hand that down to him, and he's gonna be like, "You really let that go out there into the world?" I'm like, "I sure did, buddy.
Sure did.
It was for charity. I had to do it."
Absolutely. Oh my God. I love that. That's awesome. Well, we might have to come back and circle back on our best ball exposures. Hopefully we'll be taking victory laps on our Washington takes too this year.
Yeah, definitely. Before the season, if you would like, we would love to have you jump on our podcast as well. Yeah, we always appreciate, anybody inviting us on. So we would love to have you on there. I'll try to get on your schedule here and see, what we can do before the season starts. But how many more Best Ball Mini are you going to try to do before the season?
I'm trying to save so that I can do, plenty of those single entry. I'm hoping they drop another Dalmatian or Chow Chow, those kind of buy-ins, because I know they dropped another big dog today. So, I'm trying on both DraftKings and Underdog to still get my access there. So I'm actually only doing, and I'm doing drafters too. I'm actually doing 50 of each of the lottos essentially. And so I have about 15 more BBMs, but yeah, I still have plenty more BBMs. And then, I'm trying to get access to, because, some of those have really good advance rates, and, that can be very nice. So do you try to do some of those tournaments, I assume too?
Yeah, I try to. Like I said, I did a lot of the big boards when they first came out, but that was just because I was jonesing for best ball. And it was the only thing out, so I did a lot of those. But yeah, I mean, I'll sneak a few in, from everything. I've done a few of the weekly winners as well. That one's a very interesting thing.
I'd like to do more of that too.
Yeah, it's a very interesting contest. It's going to be overlaid, and we have no data on it. It's never been done before, so I like that. Again, nobody can tell you what to do if it's right or wrong because there's zero data. So I always like those innovative things, and that's where Underdog has the monopoly on like everybody else's. They're so innovative when it comes to when it comes to these best ball tournaments. So weekly winners, I'm a big fan of that. It's a pretty cool contest.
It is. I agree. And I want to get some more action there as well. So yeah, I will definitely be still in the BBM streets, but I definitely want to kind of mix up my exposure on some of the other tournaments, hoping they drop a few other more, few other ones, obviously before the season starts. They're good about giving us a little something each week.
Yeah, they are. Do you play in the battle royales as well? The weekly, the like DFS style?
Not often. I want to get into that more this year though. I dabbled with it last year, but not often. Did you get into it a lot last year?
I did, yeah. I actually started to do those more often than I did regular DFS.
Really? Okay.
I felt like I had more of an advantage there because it's obviously, draft style. So you're not just building per salary. Yep. And, I would do my rankings, and then I would go in there and just find out, where the overlays were, where the ADP value was, and kind of go from that. So I actually did a lot better on the battle royales than I did in DFS last year. So I will probably be doing 90% battle royales this year, and DFS is probably going to fall off for me a little bit.
No, I need to get more in the battle royale streets here. This is good. This is what I call best ball friends, but it's good talking to best ball friends and getting, tips of the trade and, just talking through, the industry stuff. Like, I want to get more weekly winners in. I want to do that kind of stuff during the season. So yeah, fun to talk about. And I would love to come on your guys' podcast. That would be amazing. So yeah, let's definitely connect. But thank you so much for coming on. So follow him, Andrew, at Raub. ARUB23, and of course follow the SGP network, and be sure to subscribe and check out their best ball marathon Thursday and Friday. Watch 24-hour stream of best ball. You can't beat that. Maybe you draft with them or something. I might have to try to get in a draft with you guys. So be sure to check that out. On your way out, be sure to like and subscribe to the Fanspeak Network. Check out fanspeak.com for all our best ball content that'll be going right up until the season. And thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time.